Good morning. Welcome to Asher and Torah Time. We're up to Melachim Beis, Perik Yud Beis. We're continuing to talk about this child king, Ben Sheva Shonim, Yoash b'Molchoi. So Yoash, who was once called Yish, or Yesh Melachim Yish, and now he was called Yehoash because he returned back to becoming the king. He was 7 years old. B'Shna Sheva leYehu Melach Yoash. So Yehu, who was the Melech Yisrael, in the 7th year of his reign, Yoash was the king of Judah. 40 years he ruled over Yerushalayim. His mother's name was Tzivio. She was a tzaddikus, and Yoash went in her ways, especially since he was brought up in the Bet HaMikdash. Vayas Yoash Yoshar Beini Hashem Kol Yomo Vashahiro Yoda Kohen. All the days he was saved by his aunt, by Yoshava, and her husband was Yoda, was the Kohen Gadol, and he used to hang out in the Beis HaMikdash. So all the days that Yoda educated him or guided him, he was good. So when it says Vayas Yoash Yoshar Beini Hashem Kol Yomov, according to some Mepharshim, Kol Yomov means all the days of Yehoda, because after Yehoda was nifted, it's questionable how good Yoash was, because they bowed to Yoash. We'll see later. It says Vayazvu es Beis Hashem Adokei V'Seim Vayavlu es Hashasher V'Tzatzabim. So it means as long as Yehoda was alive. But Rak Abomois Lo Yisaru Oida Mezapchim V'Katma Abomois. But even when he was good and he eradicated all of the Avodah Zarah, the bombers he still kept. It seems like even the good ones in Tanakh, it was always something. There was always something. But in this, they weren't perfect. So this is a very famous Pedic. It's used a lot in shuls and institutions around the world. Yoash saw that in the days of Astalyahu, when his grandmother was running, she let the Beis Hamikdash fall into disrepair. She obviously had no interest in keeping the Beis Hamikdash in tip-top shape. So Yoash goes to the Kehanim and he tries to institute a method of how the Beis Hamikdash is going to be kept up to a standard, and he says, "Kol kesef hakadoshim asher yuva beis Hashem." All the money that goes in, that people bring for donations. Kesef oived, which money? This is the machzah shekel, which it says in the pasuk, "Kol oived ala pikudim." So that's called kesef oived, the money from the kol oived ala pikudim, and so to the money which people bring, kesef nafshois erkoi, which people bring for eidichem, where people donate money and they say, Erchi Shali, my value or my estimation, they would evaluate how much they're worth, and then he would bring that amount of money, any amount of money that comes up on a person's heart that he wants to donate it to the Beis HaMikdash, Lahavi Beis Hashem. What should happen to that money? So every Kohen has his acquaintances, people who he knows. So if you're a Kohen, be here for the people. Somebody brings a donation, take it, and use it for the repair of the Beis HaMikdash. They should repair all of those cracks and anything that's broken in the Beis HaMikdash. Wherever there's going to be a crack or a split or anything which needs bedika, use that. So it sounds like a beautiful idea. It's like, but what happens when you give everybody the responsibility to take care of everything? It was geschehnt. Good nicht. Zero. If you want to make sure that something should not work, here's how you do it. Tell everybody to do everything. Vayhi b'shnas 10 v'shalosh shana l'melech Yoash lo yichisku ha'kehanim es bedek habayis. Chiddush didn't get down 20. It's 15 years later. He becomes a king. Whatever. He's 7 years old. Now he's 23. So you're talking about, about 15 years down the road, some reason it's still in disrepair. Geld kind, geld gait. So he calls his Rebbe Yoyada with the Kayhana and he tells them, why aren't you taking care of the building fund? And therefore now I'm changing the rule. Nobody's allowed to take money from the people who they know. It's going to be given for the Bedek Habayis, a specific fund. So this is a big miracle that happened. Huge miracle. And the Kehanim were on the same page that they don't want to take money from the people. Could you imagine what a miracle that was? As all Shiny Eden said, no, we're not interested in taking money from the people. And not only that, this is even a bigger miracle. They said, okay, we're not going to do the job. We're not going to take care of it anymore. That's already huge. When somebody gives up his responsibility. Now, it's very interesting because on the one hand, you say, hey, why wasn't there money? Maybe there was corruption, which was what people were saying. From the fact that you see that the Kehanim were ready to give up the money and give up the responsibilities, it seems like they were equally as frustrated that things weren't getting done and it wasn't coming from a source of corruption. So then the question is, so what was actually happening to the money? Why wasn't it working? Mismanaged. So, very interesting. He took a box. This is the Makor of a Pushka. Pushka and from here. He puts a hole in the door. From the right side, where people come into the Beis Hashem, so all the money that came in went in over there. And when the people would see, when they saw that the money piled up, they gathered it together and they counted as a kesef and nimtzu Beis Hashem. So the question we just asked was, how did this box somehow fix the issue? It's like, what was happening to the money? If they weren't corrupted and they weren't taking money for themselves, why weren't things getting done? So Pasha touches is that when you have one person responsible on something, then things get done. When you have everybody responsible on everything, then things just don't get done. And you end up spending money which doesn't have to be spent, and you end up not spending money where it should, and everybody has different opinions of what has to get done and how it has to get done, and there's no consolidated effort. But I found here in David Be'itoy, I found it very interesting. That in the days of Yoyada, there was a lot of mumrim, there was a lot of apokarsim. So when they used to come and bring money, they didn't want to take the money, and should try for the geld. Ve'im kein lo have makabel mishkolim in amumrim. Befrat lazes mem tikken lebei the kabayas. She nichta ma'over and al-kiris Beis Hamikdash. You're going to use try for the geld to actually build the Beis Hamikdash. And look, shaygas eros. But now that Yoyada made a box, and the box had a slit, and the mail, anybody was able to put in money. You had to get kasha the try from the geld. Halachically kasha the money that nobody took the money and kind of to oh, there's going to be geld for no shaygas. Kind of shim can geld for no shaygas. This is what the beshishim is trotz gemisht. So it'll be like if a tziyoni walks into Satmer Besmedish and stippt daran hindert he says butel beshishim hat shgrim can geld from the tziyoni. So that's very interesting of how the Pushka actually increased the usable money for the Beis Hamikdash. Regardless, so they would count it. So they counted the money, and Chazal learned from here that they didn't they weren't held accountable, which means like this. The point of over here, there was no accountability, but once they took ne'monim, once they took responsible people to run it, hat man schon nicht nur gekickt. That's why the halacha, when you have a gabbai tzedakah, you're not allowed to, we don't get all nitty gritty with him and hold him accountable in every single nickel, because then nobody's going to be a gabbai tzedakah. So you have to make a system of accountability where one person is, or a few people are responsible. Once you set that up, it was set up very responsibly, because who took out the money from the Pushka? The Sofer HaMelech and the Kohen Gadol. So the Sofer HaMelech is somebody from the government, and the Kohen Gadol is coming from the Kehillah, from the religious institution. Both of them took out the money and counted it. But once we set up a system of responsibility, of achrayas, then you didn't check in with them anymore, and we trust them. ונוסנוס הכסף המסוכן על ידי אויסי המלוך המפוקדם בייס השם והיציאו לחרוש היועץ. Here they started giving it to the people, to the carpenters or the woodcutters, ולבוינים and the builders, אויסי בייס השם, ולגוידים לחוץ והאבן, those who were hewing out stone from the mountain, ולקנס עצם, and the lumber buyers, ואבני מחצב, all the expenses that would need to be mechazik the house. So what was the chiddush here? That they made an account specifically for one purpose. You're not allowed to use it if you need a new trumpet in the Beis HaMikdash. When you have a Bedek HaBayis fund, that money has to specifically go for the Bedek HaBayis, and it cannot be used for anything else, unless there's extra left over after all the repairs are made. Because things that were needed for the Oisei Malacha Yitnu V'chisku Boyaz Beis Hashem, that should be given to the Oisei Malacha. Only for Oisei Malacha is this money allowed to be used to be mechazik Beis Hashem, v'lo yichashvu es ha'anoshim asher yitnu es ha'kesef al yodam, and those that count the money lo says Oisei Malacha ki be'emunah oisem. Here's where it says what we just spoke about before, that we don't make a cheshbon with them. Once you take these people be'emunah oisem, they're trusted that they're doing it faithfully, and you don't constantly evaluate. You don't constantly go through their books, making sure that everything is clean, because you have to let them have space to do what they need to do. And if you want Gabbai Tzedakah to work, you have to give them their space. You just have to set up a good system to begin with. It's mamash wisdom. It's Gavald wisdom. First of all, how it's set up over here, the system goes on until today. Any successful kehillah is successful because they're following these klalim more or less. This is the ingredients of leading a successful kehillah financially. Kesef asham and kesef chatos, the money that the person brings for asham and the money that the person brings for chatos, a carbon chatos lo yuva Beis Hashem. That doesn't go to the Bedek HaBayis money. The Kehanim, that goes to the Kehanim, that they should be able to buy oilers and they should be able to bring karbanos. So there's different accounts, different funds, different donations were used for different purposes. So what happens next is that Yoyada was nifted, and then he went into a shtickle bump where Yoyosh became a shtickle of God. That, it says, the rest of the story is in Divrei Hayom. If you look in Divrei Hayom, you see that fills in the details of the story, that after Yoyada was nifted, they came to Yoyosh, and Yoyosh fell into the world of believing that he's actually something. And at that point, that's when the Peronius, that's when the problems began. Yalach Chazoy Melech Aram v'Yelochem al Gas v'Yilkedo v'Yosem Chazoel Ponov La'alois al Yerushalayim. And Chazoel came up to battle in Yerushalayim. ויקח יויש מלך יהודה את כל הקדושים אשר הקדישו יהושפט ויהוירם ואחזיהו אבויסו מלך יהודה ואת קדוshov, and because he was afraid of Melech Haram, he didn't want to get into a battle with him, so he took everything which was holy. He sends it to Chazael that he shouldn't fight with him. And he left after he took away all of the wealth. So basically he bought out his freedom. So now the servants of Yoash were upset because they saw that he veered off the path. And once he veered off the path, all of the issues began. So they made a rebellion. And they hit him over there. Which was one Amoini and a Moavi, two servants that he had. Chazal are busy how the whole story was a coffee toiva, why they were the ones to hit him. They hit Yoash Vayamos, and he was killed. Because he was a coffee toiva for Yoda Koyan, and he killed his son. So that's why Amoini and Moavi were coffee toiva to Avram, and they ended up killing him. So Yoash is like the best of Yoash is like from the better kings, and only in the end of his life did he fall through. But this tikkun that he made about how to be masak in the finances of the Beda Kabayas is something which continues on until today.